Hello friends, my name is Miss Robin, and I am the Children's Librarian at the East 38th Street Library in the Indianapolis Public Library System. And it's craft time! I'm so glad you're here again to do another craft with me. So today's craft is going to be a fun one, but before we get started, we need to remember to thank the Indianapolis Public Library Foundation and their donors, because without them we wouldn't be able to do this craft today. They have been kind enough to allow us to put together some kits, so those of you who get here to the East 38th Street Library in time can pick up a gift with almost everything you need to make our craft. Okay, our craft today is painted pots. So you will be getting a clay pot that you'll be able to paint. And once you've painted it and everything is dry, you'll get your own succulent, which is a type of plant to plant in it. And you'll be able to take care of that plant and keep it. If you come to the East 38th Street Library, we will have some kits, while supplies last, that include everything or just about everything you need to do this craft. This is what you're going to find inside your kit. So one thing you'll have in there is some instructions on how to take care of your plant after you're all done with your craft. You are going to have a clay pot. Now this clay pot is a little different than the pots that you might buy on your own. I have already sprayed sealant on these pots, both inside and out, because clay is very porous, which means when you put water in, it soaks up some of the water. So that water isn't going to be great if it gets to our paint. So I've sprayed it several times with some safe sealants. If you get your own pot, you're going to want to spray your pot with some kind of sealant. And you can get them at craft stores or hardware stores or big box stores like Lowe's or Home Depot. You spray it a couple of times, let it dry completely before you start your craft. And then also, the ingredients I'm sending home are all very safe, and they're also ingredients that you can wash out of your clothes very easily. So because of that, our paint will not be waterproof. So to make sure our paint doesn't get messed up if our pot is sitting in some water, we have put some tape around the bottom of the pot. So you'll only paint to the top of that tape. That way, if it's sitting in water, it won't reach your paint. So again, we have a clay pot that has already been sealed so that it won't soak up a lot of water, and it's already been taped along the bottom so that you can only paint to the top of the tape to keep your paint from sitting in water, because this pot is going to be an indoor pot. It's not something you want outside in the weather. You are going to have in here a set of paints, because you can't paint your pot without some paint, and you've got lots of different colors here to choose from. You have a small paintbrush. You have a sponge paintbrush. You have several pieces of sponge to paint with. You have a small container of Modge Podge. And we have some soil, because succulents like soil that doesn't hold a lot of water in. It's used to being fairly dry. So I've gone ahead and included the soil for your succulent so that you can make sure he'll be a happy plant. And then we also have, hold on just a minute, I'm back. And we also have in our bag, well, not in our bag, but at the desk, succulents for you to choose from. First come, first serve. Everyone that picks up a to-go kit from the East 38th Street Library for this particular craft will get a succulent or a small plant to plant in your pot after you're done painting it. Okay, so to get started, one thing you want to do is make sure you have clothes that you don't mind if they get dirty. We are using paint that can be washed out of clothing, and the Modge Podge that we'll seal our pots with can also be washed out of clothing, but doesn't hurt. Kind of cover our clothing up a little bit just to be safe. And since you are using paint, you're going to want to take a moment to lay down some old newspapers or get a paper plate or something to paint on so you don't get paint all over everything. I have chosen to get a paper plate, and I'm going to put my project on the paper plate while I paint. And as you'll see, I have my pot on my plate. Next thing you're going to want to do is get your paints, and you're going to want to open the little containers. Now, Sometimes these can be a little hard to open. So if you're having trouble with this, you can ask an older brother or sibling, brother or sister. You can ask an older brother or sister, or you can ask an adult that you trust to help you open these so that you can easily get to your paint. And just make sure when you're done painting today that you close these tightly, because you should have enough paint to paint something else at another time. But go ahead and open all of your paint so you can get to it easily. And then you need to decide what you want to do with your pot. It's completely up to you how you want to paint this pot. You can choose to use your paintbrush, and you can paint names on it. You can paint a design on it, whatever you like. You can choose to use the sponges, which is what I'm going to do today, and sponge paint your pot. You can choose to finger paint your pot. It's completely up to you, but take a moment to look at the pot and decide what you want to do to it. What I'll be doing today is I'm going to do a rainbow on my pot, and it's going to look something like this. This is with the sponges, and I sponge paint the paint onto my pot. In a rainbow pattern. If you follow along with me, you can choose to do what I'm doing, but you can choose to do your own thing too. There's no grade, we just want you to have fun. So as I said, I'm going to be sponge painting my pot. So what I'm going to do is take one of my sponge pieces, and first I think I want to paint the rim of my pot all one color. What color do you think we should go with? I would like it to be a nice bright color that looks good on the pot. And I think I'm going to go with green. Green just seems like the right color today. So I'm going to get my paint, and I'm going to dip my sponge into the green paint. Don't add water, because if you add water, it's going to make the paint less obvious on your pot. I've dipped my sponge in the green paint, and I'm just going to sponge it on there. See how that works? And it gives it kind of a little pattern. So you can choose to make the rim of your pot all the same color like I'm doing, or you can make it different colors. You might even choose to draw a design on the rim of your pot. Again, it's just up to you. So let's keep going and painting around the top of our pot. Make it a happy little green. And keep painting. Try to be neat, but here's the thing, it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be any way you like it. Let your creativity flow. And if you're following along with me, it does not have to look exactly like mine. It would be very boring if everything looked exactly alike. Difference is a good thing. So I think I am done with the rim of my pot. What do you think? Now, do you know what the order of the colors in a rainbow are? It's Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So if we look at our paints here, we have red, there's no orange, we do have yellow, we have green, we have blue, we don't need the brown for what we're doing, we have a purple. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Okay, so violet's kind of a purple. What's indigo? Indigo is also a purple, but indigo is a purple that's more blue, and violet is a purple that's more reddish. So I'm going to say this purple looks kind of reddish to me. So we don't have an indigo, and we don't have an orange. Well, what happens when we mix red and yellow together? Do you know? That's right, red and yellow together make orange. And what happens when we mix red and blue together? Red and blue make purple. So if indigo is a purple that has more blue tones to it, we can make our indigo by mixing red and blue together and just use more blue. So we can be red, and then orange will be red and orange together, yellow, green, blue, indigo will be blue and purple together, and then violet. So we can have all of our colors in the rainbow. Okay, are you ready to get started? Those of you that are following along with me. So first, we're going to start with our red. So pick up a new sponge piece. You should have enough sponge pieces to use these for the whole job. And we're going to take this sponge piece, kind of stick it in your paint. You have it on the end of your sponge like this. And we're going to do a line, if you're following along with me, from the top down to the tape. And you can choose how thick you want your lines to be. So if you look at mine that I made before, I made my lines fairly thick, but you could make them very thin and just repeat as you go around the pot, or you can make them thicker, up to you. I'm going to add a little bit to my line here of red. And now I'm going to add some more red because we need to mix some yellow. Oop, I made a mess. We need to mix some yellow and red together to make orange. So I made a very big section of red right there. Now I'm going to take another piece of sponge and I'm going to dip it into the yellow paint. Make sure you get some yellow on your sponge, and I'm going to add that to the red on this side so it mixes together. You can see it's getting a slightly different color to it. It's going to get an orange cast. It's definitely turning orange on my sponge. And now we have red and orange. Now take your sponge, your yellow sponge, turn it the other way, use the other side. Go ahead and dip it back in the yellow. Because now we've got red, orange, we need yellow. So next to our orange, go ahead and sponge some yellow onto your pot. You might get a little paint on your hands while you're holding the pot. That's okay, it should wash off easily. So now we have red, orange, yellow. Do you remember what's next? Roy, G, Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green. So I already did green around the top, so I'm going to take my sponge that has green on it already. If you haven't done green, get a new piece of sponge and use that one as your green sponge. I'll dip this back into my green and put my green stripe right next to my yellow stripe. There we go. So red, orange, yellow, green. Now it's time for, that's right, it's time for blue. Grab a new piece of sponge. This one's going to be my blue sponge, and I dip it into the blue paint. Got lots of blue paint on there, and I'm going to make a stripe next to my blue sponge. I make my blue stripe next to my green sponge, I'm sorry. Okay, so how much do we have left? This is about perfect. I'll have one stripe all the way, one stripe for each color, and that will get me all the way around. My last two stripes might be kind of small, so now's a good time to just kind of look and see how much space you have left. We have two more colors to go, indigo and violet. So if you have a big space there, it's okay. You can add more stripes after you're done. If you have a little space and you can't quite get all the colors in, that's okay too. Again, this is just a fun thing to do today. It's a fun craft to do at home. So I'm going to go ahead and try to make my indigo. And do you remember what makes purple? It's red and blue. And do you remember indigo is a purple that's really blue, more blue than red. So I'm going to actually add a little blue to my line here, make my blue line just a little bit bigger. There you go. And then I'm going to grab my red sponge. And I'm going to go over some of that blue. You know what? Looks way more red than blue. So you might have to play with this a little bit. I think I need some more blue to go on there to get my indigo, my really blue purple. So let's go ahead and add some more. Ah, there we go. Look at that. That's going to be my indigo. Didn't make a very straight line though, did I? And then finally, I'm going to take one more sponge. This is going to be my violet or purple color, and I do have a violet in my paint. Let's go ahead and dip your sponge into your paint and put your violet stripe on there. Okay, so let's take a look at my product. If you're not done painting, you can pause here. Maybe your stripes were much smaller than mine, which is fine. Or maybe you'd like to add some more colors to parts of yours, also fine. But I'm going to take a quick look at mine and see if I've got all my colors of the rainbow. So there's my red, my orange, and my yellow, my green, my blue, my indigo, and my violet. I have all my colors in there. So if I'm looking at it, my yellow, I think I could use a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to add some more yellow to mine. If you're happy with your yellow, leave it alone. I just want a little bit more color to show. Aha, look at that. Way more yellow. Green looks pretty good. I actually like a little bit more of the blue there. So I'm going to grab my blue sponge and add a little bit more blue over that. Oh, the more paint you add, if you let it dry a little bit and add some more, look at that color payoff. Way blue. Then I've got my indigo and my purple or violet. I'd like a little bit more purple there because purple happens to be my favorite color. Okay, so I'm pretty pleased with this. I think it looks pretty good. Are you happy with yours? Well, now here's the hard part. I'm going to take my pot here and put it on this little paper plate, and I'm going to let it sit. Before we do anything else to our pot, before we seal it, or before we plant our plant, we have to let the paint completely dry. This could be a couple of hours. It could be overnight. So you just need to be patient. Pause here and let your paint dry. When your paint is completely dry and you're ready for the next step, come back to me. I'll be here. Hello, friends. I am back. As you can see, it's the next day. I let my pot sit overnight to make sure everything was completely dry. And when I lightly run my finger around the pot, you can see none of the paint comes off on my fingers. So I'm ready to do the next step. and that is putting Modge Podge on the paint to help seal it a little bit. Now Modge Podge is kind of like a glue, and it looks exactly like glue actually. You can see it right here in the container. Looks just like glue. And when you put it on your pot, it will help seal it a little bit. Now again, I need to stress, it's not waterproof, so you can't put this outside in the rain, and you don't want to get the pot wet, much anyway. But it will help protect your paint some, and it will keep paint from coming off on your hands if you rub it too much. So our next step is put the Modge Podge on our pot. So we have our pot, we have the Modge Podge, and we have our sponge brush. Now we're going to take our Modge Podge and open it. Be careful not to spill it all over the place. And then just take your brush, dip it in the Modge Podge, get a good amount on there, and then you'll take your pot, and you'll just start brushing the Modge Podge over the painted parts of your pot. You'll have to dip back into the Modge Podge several times. You'll see it makes my pot white because it is pretty much glue that I'm putting on there. But the good thing is, when that dries, it won't be white anymore. It should dry just about clear, and it gives a nice look to our paint. Go ahead, cover everything that we painted. Make sure you're not missing any, because see right here, I've missed a whole section. And I'll put it here. And if you're like me, you might make a mistake, but since we're covering all of the outside of our pot in Modge Podge, it's okay. I just wipe it on there because it's going to have Modge Podge on it too. If you see any spots where there's a whole lot and it's really thick, you can go ahead and use your brush without adding more Modge Podge and just kind of wipe it a bit to make sure it's not quite as thick. Make sure you get all of the rim of your pot. Keep brushing that on there. You should have plenty left for another project if there's something else you want to try using this on. But make sure that your pot is well covered. So I've got all the rim covered. It's a little messy looking, but when it's dry, you're not going to be really able to notice that. Got a couple spots where it's a little thick, so I'm going to thin that out just a bit. Okay, so this looks pretty good to me. I've got all of the outside covered. I didn't put it on the bottom because the bottom might be in water sometimes, and remember, it's not waterproof. So the bottom's okay, and I didn't put any on the inside, again, because it's not waterproof, and we will have to water our plants sometimes. So everything's covered, and what I'll do now is I'll just put this on my plate I've been using, and now I need to let it dry. And we have to wait a while for it, but we're going to let this sit until it's completely dry, and that means all these white spots are going to be clear now. It will be ready for our next step. So go ahead and put yours in a safe spot where it can dry, and come back to me when your pot is completely dry. We'll be ready for the next step then. Bye. Hello friends, and I'm back, and we're on the final step of our craft now. If you look at my pot, it's all dry. The Modge Podge is dry, the paint is dry. We're ready for our plant. We only have one more thing to do before the plant. We need to take this tape off because we don't need it anymore. Our painting is done. So you'll need to kind of get to the bottom of your pot, find the edge of your tape, and just slowly peel that off of the bottom. of your pot. There you go. Go ahead and put that in the trash. And you'll see it's all painted. And I have like a little strip where it's not painted. It just looks kind of nice at the bottom, I think. But also, if I water it, if there's any water sitting in the plate with it, it won't be soaking up that water into the paint. It gives us some empty space between the water and the parts that are not waterproof, the Modge Podge and the paint. So it's ready for our plant. So on our next step, we're going to need the soil that was in your kit, and we're going to need the plant you picked up when you got your kit. And this is the one I'm using today. It's a succulent, and a succulent is a plant that's kind of fleshy. It's thick. The pieces are kind of thick feeling like this, and they're that way to store water. So they don't need water as much as like a daisy would, because it doesn't have these fleshy parts to hold as much water in. They do need to be watered, but when you water a succulent, you wait until it feels dry on the dirt inside feels dry, and then you water the plant and then let it dry out completely again. Okay, so this is our succulent, this is our dirt, and we've got our pot. Now you'll notice the pot has a hole in the bottom, so you'll want to put your finger over the hole, and then you're going to get your bag of dirt, and we're going to pour about half of the dirt into the pot. Yeah, mine's being a little bit tricky, but let's go ahead and pour it through. See, about half of my dirt's in there. See, inside my pot, I've got my dirt. The main reason I put my finger over the hole, that's a drainage hole so that extra water can get out. But if I didn't do that, the dirt might have gotten out too. So now it's okay. So I've got it halfway full with my succulent soil. And if you remember, succulents don't like a whole lot of water in their soil, so this soil doesn't hold a lot of water. Our next step is to get our plant and very carefully get it out of the plastic pot that it came in. So don't pull on this, because if you pull on this, you might accidentally pull the plant out of the dirt and hurt it. So we're going to lay it on its side and just kind of gently tug until we get it out of the pot. Now it needs to go in its new pot, which is much bigger than the old pot. So we're just going to lay it in the pot on top of the soil that we already put in there. But you'll see it's got the dirt that came with it still, which is good. But there's space around the sides. So now we're going to need the rest of our dirt. And the rest of our dirt, we're going to very carefully pour into the sides of our plant. And it's also going to help when you put the dirt down the side of the plant. If you get a small spoon, you can fill that with the soil and then kind of put it exactly where you want it. It's a lot easier than trying to just pour it from the bag like I was. So we're going to keep doing this. And go ahead and keep putting dirt in your plant. Careful with the plant. You don't want to break the plant because it needs all those leaves. It's got a lot of water stored up in there. And just keep using your little spoon that hope you got from your kitchen. And keep putting the soil down the sides of your plant. If you look now, my plant is pretty much full of dirt. He's ready to go. So one of the things you'll want to do after you're done putting the soil and the plant in the pot is you're going to want to give your plant some water, because right now the soil is all really dry. And when you water your succulent plant, you'll touch the top, and if the soil feels dry, not damp at all, then you're going to put some water in it. And you're going to keep putting water in until water actually drips out the bottom. I don't have any water dripping out the bottom yet. I probably need a little bit more water. So it's going to start dripping out the bottom of the pot soon. It feels nice and moist on the top. So I know he's got water. See, it's dripping onto my plate now, so I'm going to let it drip. I don't want it pouring out, just dripping out of the hole at the bottom. That's pretty good. And when it slows down, I'm going to pour the rest of my water in my sink so that my pot isn't sitting in a bowl or a plate full of water. And it's ready to go. How does it look, guys? I think it looks so great. My plant is pretty. I think he's going to be happy in his bigger pot. The pot looks nice. We've got our little area there so it won't soak up too much water. I think we're done. How did yours turn out? I'm happy with mine. I hope you're happy with yours. Remember to take good care of your plant. Every couple of days, touch the top of the plant where the soil is. And if it feels completely dry, not damp at all, give it a little water. You're going to want to put this plant into a very sunny window. Try to find the sunniest window where you live and put this plant there, because succulents like a lot of sun too. They don't like a lot of water, they like a lot of sun. So I'll take this one and put it in one of the sunniest places I can find it, and hopefully he will be a happy and healthy plant. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed our craft today. Some of you, if you're doing this on your own, if you didn't manage to get the kit, I will post a listing of all the supplies that we used for this kit. One thing to keep in mind is if you are too late to get the kit and you're doing it on your own, we do have a seed library. So if you're not here in time to get a plant, you can get some seeds and plant the seeds in your pot. And yeah, this size pot would be perfect for like some herbs to cook with, or maybe some simple little flowers. You could plant them in there, keep it in a sunny window, and watch them grow. So I will post a list of everything we used so that you can recreate this at home just in case. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I'll see you next time with our next craft. Thank you, guys. Thanks for playing today.